also, if there's any questions that you have, please leave it in the chat box, or you can unmute and start the session. And yeah, and then we'll just take your questions one at a time. Okay, so let's get straight into it. Okay. Firstly, before we begin with theory, I want to draw your attention to an exam scope that you will be receiving, or that you would have received from your lecturers. This is a basic scope of areas that you should focus on. However, it is completely up to you if you want to follow the scope or if you want to go ahead and study everything just to be sure. I always would study everything because you never know, what could come out that was not in the scope, and you don't want to limit yourself. But this is some things that we were told that you could focus on. Okay, so you can have a look at this. I'm sure your lecturers would have posted it. If not, I will be happy to send this to you after the session. So you just have to email me and I will send it to you. Okay, so the layout of your exam is quite simple. You have matching columns, multiple choice, you'll have definition of concepts, and also, again, just like some similarities and contrast of terminologies, and then a case study with questions that will follow. Okay, so yeah, it is a longer, well, it will be longer than your test was. So just be prepared for that, that you might have longer questions that you'll be dealing with. Okay. So this masterclass is going to follow the scope. So if you want more in-depth information about the first 3 learning units, then please refer back to the test masterclass where I do go through them more in depth. But when it comes to the first 3 learning units in this masterclass, we're not going to spend too much time on it because we've already covered it. Okay. So first thing, let's look at the 4 elements of business. It is always good for you to know what these 4 elements are. And they are people, our human resources, so human activities as well, processes that change our resources into goods and services, and also profit and surplus, and the concept of exchange. So it's always good to have a basic understanding of what these 4 elements are. Please do not get them confused with planning, leading, organizing, and controlling. Those are not the 4 elements of business. That is more on the management side. So if you are looking at the 4 elements, you are looking at humans and human activities. You are looking at the goods and services that are provided by the business and the processes that are used to change those resources into finished goods and services. We're also looking at making a profit or a surplus in a business and the concept of exchange. And we've also gone through this more in depth in the test. So I won't linger on this, but yeah, if you do have questions, please just leave them in the chat box. Okay, moving on to skills and characteristics of an entrepreneur. So we know that the entrepreneurship learning unit is quite large. There's lots of content in it, but for the purpose of this masterclass and the time that we have, we're going to touch on the skills. Yeah, we're just going to touch basically on the skills of an entrepreneur. And if you do have questions on any other aspects on this, then please do ask me and I will answer your questions. Okay, so starting with the first skill and characteristic. Now, looking at an entrepreneur, when he is committed, when he is passionate, he has this willingness to make his idea become this reality. And if you've ever had a business idea before, or even if you've just had a goal before, when you are actually committed to it, which means you're working on it every day, you're very passionate about it, you're always talking about it, you're always researching it, you know that the likelihood of this actually coming into reality is quite large because you're putting so much time and energy into this business idea. So that is exactly what commitment and passion is all about. Okay, it is this determination to persevere in this goal and be committed to it. So maybe you're spending extra hours on it. So you can also think about your studies and think about, like, if you want to achieve a certain goal, say you want to get an A, showing commitment, showing passion for that subject, that's going to get you there faster, right? Than if you were not committed, you didn't spend much time on it, there was a lack of passion that went into it. Maybe you don't like the module, you don't see good results. So commitment and passion is actually a really important characteristic. It keeps the entrepreneur in motion. And then we have determination. Okay, so when an entrepreneur is determined, he has this confidence and this belief in himself and this idea that it is going to be successful. Okay, so being determined is not something that comes about very easily, and it's also not easy to stay on this determination train. Maybe one day you're feeling determined and the next day you're not that determined. When you are an entrepreneur, however, determination is key. So every single day you are motivating yourself, you are pushing yourself, you are persistent. Okay, when you're seeing problems and challenges, you are determined to fix them. So think about yourself, think about areas in your life that you are determined in. And regardless of what happens, regardless if you appear to fail at something, you get up again and you try again. So that is also a very important characteristic of being an entrepreneur. Leadership. Okay, leadership is extremely important. Leadership, not only in terms of being a manager, but when you are running a business, you are providing guidance and direction to the group of people that are also involved in this business. So when you have a vision, when you have a mission, you need someone to actually lead it, to guide you to seeing the bigger picture. So when you're an entrepreneur, being a leader is a part of who you are because you have a vision, you have this goal in mind, you have this objective, and you are now trying to get everyone to see the same thing. So you're leading them towards that goal. Okay, good human relation skills. So remember, these are our people skills. Now, entrepreneurs have excellent people skills, and they need to because networking is a part of business. Okay, and networking refers to if you have to go to a conference or just have or interact with other business people, other managers, other owners of businesses. A lot of opportunities come by through networking. So if you are an entrepreneur and you are not in favor of networking, or if you don't have good human relation skills, there is a chance that you are missing out on a few opportunities. So yeah, knowing how to speak to people, knowing how to motivate them, knowing how to communicate and talk about your goals and objectives, that's also a huge part of human relations. And then the most common one we have is the willingness to take risks. This is a big one because when you start a business, don't you agree that there are so many risks that you can encounter, being financial risks, your personal risks, career risks, even psychologically, because you're putting so much time and effort into your project or your business idea, it can get draining. I mean, also think about it if you are an A student and you are studying every day after school, you get home and you start studying. Eventually, it's going to have a psychological impact on you. You're going to be drained. You're not going to have much of a social life. Maybe you're going to be grumpy some days because you didn't get enough sleep. So that's the risk entrepreneurs are willing to take. Because when you are committed to an idea, you want to see this come to life, there is no time for breaks. So you're taking all the risks, you are investing the money that you have in it. Some relationships are even compromised. Maybe it puts a strain on the relationships that you have because you're not spending as much time with people anymore. So these are risks that entrepreneurs are willing to take because they want to see their business successful. Being creative and innovative. Now, I always say you don't necessarily have to be the most innovative person in the room or the most creative person in the room to be a successful entrepreneur, but the way you go about things should be done so in a creative and innovative manner. And that simply means also just the strategies that you develop, or how you promote your product, or how you launch your product, or how you even just talk about your business. So just having a creative mindset and having this willingness to be unique and different in the market is also going to set you apart from your competitors. So being creative and being innovative is going to be your competitive advantage. And that's why it's also a very important skill to have, but it doesn't mean you have to invent something that's never been invented before, or you have to create something that's never been heard of. You can take an existing concept and you can turn it into something more and different. Okay, so if you think about like if you look on social media these days, like basic things like tables and chairs, they are being reinvented almost. You have chairs now that don't have legs, or you have tables that are very different. So simple things are changed in a creative and innovative way, things that already exist. So you don't necessarily have to invent something brand new to be a successful entrepreneur. Okay, a need for independence and control. So this is the last one that we're looking at for skills and characteristics. So when you have a need for independence and control, think about in your own life. Like if you have something that is yours or that you have developed and you have created, then you feel that you know it best, right? So you want to take the lead. You're not going to delegate this to someone else and tell them, okay, I've come this far, this is how much I've done. I'm allowing you to just continue and do the rest. Entrepreneurs need to be in control. They need to be fully in the loop of what's happening with their idea. Even if they are delegating tasks and duties to other people, you'll find that they still want to overlook it, and they still want to lead, and they still want to be in charge of everything that's going on. Okay, because they also have this mindset that they're the genius behind the idea. So they have to be a part of it at every step, or it could potentially be unsuccessful. It's just a part of the entrepreneurial mindset. Okay, so we've brisked through this. I hope everyone is on board and everyone's still good. But remember, like I said, for the test, we went through it more in depth. So please just refer to that, and I can always send the recording of that test masterclass as well if you need it, okay? We're moving on to business environments. Okay, so business environments, we have internal and we have an external environment. Now, it's so important as a business owner and as a manager to focus on what is going on internally and what is going on externally, and to collect information from both of these environments to help us with strategies that we have, or to even help us input that into our product development. So for example, if we look at the first environment being the internal is the business itself. Okay, if it is the business itself, it means that we have full control of this environment. It means that when things start to change internally, it doesn't have to be this whole disruptive force in the organization, because managers will then step in. They'll try to counteract all these different changes. It's within their control. So, for example, one of the factors here will be like your vision and your mission statement. Okay, you are in control of changing that vision and mission statement. So it's not as disruptive as the external environment. When we look at the external environment, these are environments that are directly outside of our business. Okay, so we have the market environment and we have the macro environment. Our market environment is our consumers, our competitors, our suppliers. And then when we come to the macro environment, these are all the factors that are very far out of our reach. So things like economic factors, legal factors, the social environment, the technological environment. So it becomes more complex as you work your way into the external environment. But why it's so important to conduct market research outside of the business is because it has a direct impact on our business. So if you think about technology and how technology is changing constantly, we have to keep an eye of these changes because we need to evolve alongside those technological developments. Imagine if business enterprises were still using like very old PCs and maybe even like very old machinery and equipment. That will be much slower than the businesses that have actually capitalized and invested in newer digital technology and newer equipment and machinery. So in order to remain competitive, we do have to analyze these environments to see how we can incorporate the changes into our business strategies. Also look at consumers. If our main goal is to make a sale, to make a profit, then we have to directly look at our consumers, right? Because they are the ones who are buying from us. So we have to look at the consumer market and we have to look at what's going on there, like what's changing, why are things changing? Is it trends? And you guys should know, like now with social media, when things start to change online and there's new cultures and there's new trends and there's a new vibe going on, then everyone, it's like a snowball effect. And then sooner or later, you have a whole group of consumers who are now on a new trend and they have new preferences and changed behavior. So it becomes difficult to keep track of all of this and all of these changes. And it would be very disruptive if the business had to change as much as the environment changes. But what happens is when you do see these changes and you start to keep track of it, it becomes easier to see what will align to your business or how can you incorporate this into your business. Okay, so we're going to look at the internal environment for today. And we're going to look at some of the different components within the business. So here we have our vision statement, our mission statement, objectives, and also business functions. And we also have SWOT analysis and resources. These are different components that we can look at that lie inside of the business that is within our control. If we look at the vision statement, now we've also done this in depth in the test masterclass. So I'm not going to get too in depth this, but in a nutshell, when we look at a vision statement, it is looking at a clear image of where we want to go. So it can be in the far future, sort of like the organization's dream. Okay, so the vision is where we want to go, where we are headed. Usually, when we're looking at our vision statements, we expect them to be short and specific and straight to the point because we want it to be very clear. We want it to immediately tell us what is the goal, what is the future goal of this business, where is this business headed, okay? And we can also use this as a motivating factor inside of your company. So if you have people inside your company that are very demotivated, they don't really want to work too hard, they're not being as productive, then you can use your vision statement to actually motivate them. So by telling them, look, this is what we want to accomplish in the next 5 years, or even in the next 10 years. And if we are able to accomplish these smaller goals, then it won't be long until we reach this vision. And they make the vision sound very compelling. Maybe they want to expand into international markets. Okay, that could be part of the vision statement. So yeah, this is used to motivate, to inspire, to get people to actually be more productive and more excited about where the business is headed. And then when we look at a mission statement, so this is looking at like, what do we want to do, or what are we currently doing, and what do we want to achieve? Okay, it also can look at what we should be doing in order to accomplish that that vision statement. So in order to do this, we look at some questions like, what is our business? What are our customers? How will the product or service be supplied? And why are we in business? So it looks at the what, who, when, and why questions. And this is important because it helps us to put together a very clear and concise mission statement. And if you have to go on to a few business pages, like you can even go to Checkers or Pick and Pay and just have a look at their website, you should see their mission statement and their vision statement. This is almost like what a business is, what's the purpose of the business, what do they claim to be, what do they hope to achieve, okay, what do they stand for? This is all a part of what their mission is. Okay, and now moving on to objectives. So remember, objectives and goals, they're very different. Where goals are more vague, we have objectives that are more specific. So it gives us a detailed description of what we want to achieve. So maybe we can have a goal that we want to increase our sales in the next month, but the objective will be a specific figure. So maybe we want to increase our sales by 20% in the month of June. Okay, and you can even give a specific date. So objectives are there to keep us in line. It is also there to help us achieve whatever is in our mission statement. Okay, and to align with that mission statement, and to also break down the bigger goals. So if you have one large organizational goal, it makes it more achievable when you break it down into smaller objectives. So the smaller objectives will be like things that you want to do on a daily basis, things you want to do on a monthly basis, the smaller goals that we have in order to reach the bigger business objective. In business functions, so this is also within our control in an organization. Within business functions, we have our different departments, okay? So for example, we can have operations, we can have marketing, we can have financial management, human resource management, supply chain management. So all of this is, of course, led by management, okay? And at the very core of management, we have planning, leading, organizing, and controlling. So that is how we are able to manage the activities and everything that takes place within these different business functions. Okay, so every manager should have the ability to plan, to lead, organize, and control, and that is how we keep things running smoothly within each of these business functions. And then we have resources. So resources is another element or another component that we are able to control. Remember that we can use resources as an input in our transformation process. So we get different types of resources. We have our human resources, which are people that are working for us. We have our financial resources. This is things like our capital, physical resources, the equipment that we need to use, vehicles, machinery. Natural resources refers to water, the land. A lot of manufacturing businesses use water as one of the resources to get their machines running. So that could be a very important resource. Information resources, okay, so access to information systems. The information resources is the market research that we've collected that's going to help us make better decisions and also to make our processes more efficient and more effective. So for example, if you are manufacturing a product, when you do market research, you find out what the market actually wants. You find where's the gap, what's in demand, what consumers need, what they want, and that becomes your information resources. So during the product development phase, you can use that information and the suggestions that we get from the consumer market, and we can use that to actually improve our products. So I don't know if you've ever taken notice to some products in the stores, which you probably have. Maybe they change their packaging slightly, or maybe they change the font on their packaging or the size of the packaging. Because businesses are always aiming to improve based on the responses that they get in the market. So if you find that consumers are complaining about something being too uncomfortable to hold, or it's just inconvenient, you will find that businesses will take that information and try to work it into the transformation process. This happens a lot in the cell phone industry. So if you think about iPhone, okay, if you take iPhone and even Samsung as well, every time they come out with a new phone, it's always made more efficient. It's always made maybe slimmer, easier to hold. It's the intention here is to answer the market demands. Okay, and then entrepreneurship. So this is the characteristics that we've just been through. So looking at like the unique competencies, the unique skills, the ability to lead, all of those little things. So these are all with our control. And they all fall inside our business. Okay, and then we also have the SWOT analysis, which you guys would have remembered from your assignment that you had to do. So we can use a SWOT analysis to research our internal environment and measure that up against like what's happening externally. So we can look at our internal strengths and our weaknesses and see where we have to improve, as well as looking at our external opportunities and threats that lie there as well. So you'll find that a business will consistently do a SWOT analysis when they want to get more intel as to where they currently are and what's currently happening in the environments, in the business environments. Okay, it also allows us to gain valuable information that we can use in strategy formation, in the planning phase, okay, in product development, in marketing. Okay, is everyone okay so far? So this would have covered everything up until where we would have stopped in the test masterclass. So now the next part that we're going to go into is management. But before I go into management, I just want to make sure that everyone's still okay. Is there anything that you would like me to reiterate? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to management. Okay. Now, what is the importance of management? That's what we are looking at. Okay, so managers are needed, or the concept of management in a business is needed because we need assistance in helping the organization achieve their goals. And think of managers in each department, in each functional area, like our operations, our marketing, our sales, our finance. Within each of those departments, we have many employees, okay? And they all have to be doing their part in order to reach the bigger organizational goal. So essentially, managers will step in to assist with planning, leading, organizing, and controlling the tasks and like the activities that we have to do in order to reach organizational goals and organizational objectives. Okay, also management is needed for aligning the organization with the external environment. So just understanding what's going on in our external environment, collecting necessary data and information that we can use for our internal strategies. That is how businesses stay successful, because they actually do market research consistently and they see what is actually happening, what's in demand, what's changing. And now we have to pay careful attention to if you look at the economy and if you look at the economic recession, also like the prices are going up, fuel is going up, all of this is going to take a massive toll on businesses because they are ordering stock, they're making deliveries, they're buying from suppliers. So when management is in the knowing of what is happening in the external environment, they're able to better align the entire organization as a whole. Okay, and then also to ensure operational efficiency. So if you think about what managers do, essentially, they are leading people in each department. Okay, and when you are leading people in each department, you're basically overlooking that performance standards are being met. Employees are productive, they are motivated, they are doing things in the correct manner, they are doing things in a quality manner. And also a lot of the processes and a lot of the procedures in the business are also run in a quality manner. So this is how they ensure operational efficiency. Things are being done within our performance standards. Also, they are done with a quality manner. And yeah, they're overlooking this. So if you think about the transformation process, okay, so where our products get manufactured, if we did not have a manager overlooking the processes and the different activities that take place in the transformation process, there's a potentiality that maybe you could miss something. Maybe, a machine malfunctions and now there's defects in our product that we would have detected had we had a manager overlooking the process. So management is very important. Okay, it's very important in keeping the business running smoothly, keeping it running effectively and also efficiently. Okay, so with that being said, we are now going to look at the 3 different levels of management. We have top management, middle, and lower. Okay, so this is the 3 levels of management that will exist in a business. Our first level of management is our top managers. Now, our top managers are the ones that are setting the bigger goals and objectives for the whole organization. So they are not concerned with the smaller activities like the daily operations, what's happening in terms of sales on a daily basis. They are more concerned with the bigger picture and forming that bigger picture. So you can think of this as people that are the CEO of a business, your board of directors, okay? So these are people that are controlling and overseeing the organization as a whole. And they are concerned with strategic planning. Now, strategic planning is our long-term planning. So you know how we discussed a vision statement? Top managers are the ones who create that vision statement and who also create the mission statement. And they will pass on these bigger goals and objectives down to middle level management. Middle level management will then break these up into smaller, more achievable goals and objectives within each of their department. Okay, so just remember, top level managers are concerned with the organization as a whole. So most likely, Each organization can be different, but maybe after every 6 months or after a year, top managers will collect information from each department and from each level of management. And they will have like this basic summary of what took place in marketing for the year, what took place in the finance department, what took place in operations. And they use that summary of information to then plan for the next year and to set new goals and new objectives, and also to have an indication of how the business is performing. Okay, but obviously not at a operational level, not on a daily basis, but more at a strategic level. So they are looking at everything as a whole, and how can we now use this information to better our plans, better our strategies for the following year. Then we come to middle level managers. Now, these are our functional managers. So remember, we looked at the functional departments. So our marketing, our sales, our operations. Our middle level managers are the ones that are now overlooking those departments. So for example, your marketing manager, your sales manager, your human resource manager. Okay, so they are responsible for implementing strategies that are set by our top level management. So they will take these strategies and they will break them down into smaller goals, goals that are easier to achieve, easier for the employees within those departments to understand and achieve, and also to do it at an appropriate pace as well. Okay, so yeah, you can have specific goals that are set in each department. So for example, if you are in marketing, you have specific goals in marketing that will be different from the goals in operations. However, everything does align. So for example, maybe your goal in marketing is to have a specific, like you want to have a specific promotion for a product launch. But to ensure alignment, you need to ensure that that promotional strategy that you have, it aligns to the bigger organizational goal. It falls in line with the mission, the vision, what the business stands for, what is the purpose of the business. And then also you would look at other departments, you will look at how you can align yourself to that. When it comes to the financial management department, you have to look into that department for budgeting maybe. How much do we actually have to implement this promotional activity? Then you look into operations, you look at the product itself. You can then find creative ways in which you can actually promote this product. So all of this is smaller goals, smaller objectives that are derived from your larger objectives. And then our lower level managers. So these are the managers that are our line managers, our supervisors. So you can think of it as when you go to a store and you're not happy with the service and you want to speak to a manager, they go to the back and they bring out the floor supervisor. This would be a lower level manager. So most of the time, our lower level managers are responsible for the management of the employees who produce the product or who are conducting the services on so the employees that are actually running things on a technical level on a daily basis. They are very much involved with the daily operations. So the things that are happening every from making sure that the machines are on and there's no malfunctions with that, to making sure that sales targets are being met every day. Okay, so yeah, they can be floor managers, line managers, and they are there to supervise employees. Now, communication here is very important because they are directly working with the customers. So they are managing the employees that are working with customers. So for example, if you go into a store and you are not happy with the product and you want to speak to a line manager, they will go ahead and call the line manager, and then you have to know exactly the workings of the product, everything about the product in order to best assist the customer. So you have to have a well-rounded knowledge of everything going on with your business, what you have to offer, your quality, your quantity, all of that. Okay. Now that we understand the different levels of management, let's look at some of the skills. Okay. Now, there are different skills that are required at different levels of management. They are all important. However, some more than others will be required at different levels. So let's take a look at conceptual skills. Conceptual skills is our ability to think and analyze and to understand complicated and abstract ideas. So think about doing market research on a very large scale, taking that research, analyzing it, evaluating that information, and then turning it into something understandable. Okay. Also, if you're taking information from inside the organization, you have to be able to conceptualize that information to make it make sense almost. Okay. So this is most important at management level. Although every level of management should have a certain degree of conceptual skills, it is mostly important at top level management because our top level managers are concerned with strategic planning. So they are looking at the overall goal of the business and where we want to go, right? The future of the organization. So they are always dealing with market research and information that's coming in from inside and outside of the business. So they have to be able to understand and evaluate these abstract and complex amounts of information that's coming in. Interpersonal skills, okay, always think of interpersonal skills as our people skills. So our ability to have emotional intelligence, to be able to communicate well, okay, all levels of management should have this skill because you should be able to communicate well on all levels throughout. And remember, in an organization, communication is key. Actually, as a life skill, communication is key because everything comes back to communication. Your employees need you to communicate clearly as to what they need to do. So if your communication skills are not that great, it's going to cause a lot of misunderstandings in the business, which is something that you can't afford to do. Okay, because more misunderstanding equals more error, which equals need to rectify that error. So interpersonal skills is very, very important for all levels of management. And also, if you think about conflict, so conflict can arise in a business. So when you have good people skills, you are able to manage this conflict. You are able to have the intelligence to not get involved directly in the conflict, but to diffuse the situation. Okay, it also allows you to not take sides, but to speak from an unbiased point of view, which is very much needed at a managerial level because you are a leader and you are supposed to be there assisting your employees, supporting them, motivating them. So if you're going to take sides, if you are going to be biased, if you are going to cause more issues than you are resolving them, then there's going to be a lot of tension in the workplace. And if there's more tension, that's going to equal less productivity, okay, which is not good for your business. So interpersonal skills, very important, especially when it comes to networking as well outside of the business. And then technical skills. Okay, so with technical skills, this is having specialized knowledge. Now, I would advise that you learn the concepts of each of these. What is a conceptual skill? What is an interpersonal skill? What is a technical skill? Because these always get tested. Okay, you should know what these are and also how to provide an example of it. So technical skill, for example, you're looking at specialized knowledge or like an expertise in how to execute a task. So maybe there's a specific software that not everyone in the organization knows how to use, but maybe someone in the technological environment knows how to use it. That's having specialized knowledge. So these technical skills are mostly needed at lower level because these are the skills that are happening on a daily basis, the skills that are important on a daily basis to run the business. Okay. Yeah, so knowing how to do things like track your finances, using accounting software, using different databases, walking certain machines. Not everyone can do it, and that's why it is specialized knowledge. Okay, so it's most prevalent with the lower level. Now, this is just a short little diagram to help you summarize everything that we just spoke about. So here are your different levels. And then when you look at it in relation to the skills needed, as you can see, conceptual skills, although it's needed throughout, a very large portion of conceptual skills is needed at top. Then you have a little bit in the middle, and then you have a very small amount at lower, because lower level management is not tasked with doing extensive market research and analyzing that research and forming goals and objectives. They usually get information passed down from the middle level management, in which they then form their own daily goals, and that's how they go about their activities. But top level management, they are concerned with extensive amounts of market research, and they are tasked with conceptualizing and understanding that research. So that is mostly needed at top level. Then we have human skills or interpersonal skills that is needed throughout the organization because communication is key. And then technical skills, although it is needed throughout the organization, majority of it is needed at lower level because this is where our daily operations are taking place. Okay, so that wraps up the management aspect of things. We're going to move on to HR management, more specifically the training and development section. Okay, so we know training and developing are integral parts of HR management because they enhance skills, they boost productivity, and they align individual performance with the organizational goals. So that's why it's important for us to focus on it. So we're going to look at the development phase. Within the development phase, we have our process and implementation. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, we're going to look at this phase right here. I hope you can see this slide because it's not very clear. So the implementation of training and development. Okay, there are 4 phases here. Know the different phases, know what they mean, know how to explain these. Okay, so number 1, the first step in the phase is identifying training and developmental needs. So conducting a training needs assessment in all levels of the organization. This is very important. So identifying where do we need to train or to what extent and what exactly are the developmental needs. This is the same as identifying the problem or the issue or the challenge. But in this case, we are looking at the training challenges and the developmental challenges. And this is going to help guide the rest of our process. Okay. Then we come to the second step, which is training and development objectives that are then identified and written out. Okay, we always need to create objectives when it comes to any type of plan that we have to implement. Having an objective gives us direction. It gives us an idea of what we need to accomplish in order to finally achieve our end goal. Okay, so once we've done this evaluation of what the training and developmental needs are in our organization, we set objectives and also we try to understand what do we possibly need to meet those different needs. Okay, so a lot of brainstorming goes into this. And then training programs are developed from the objectives. So from looking at what would my employees actually need, what will fill the gap in our organization, and then we develop a formal training program. And then from this, we evaluate the training program and we look at how we can do better. Remember, performance is always something that we are concerned with in business. So every plan, every strategy that we have, we always have to assess it and evaluate it to see if it actually met up to the standard that we set. So if you had a specific objective and a specific goal in regards to training and development programs, then during the evaluation phase, you are now measuring to see if you did in fact meet those goals. And if not, then you go back, you revise, you look at like what are the elements that we overlooked or didn't include in the program. And then the next time around, you will then do it all over again. Now, this is something that can be done continuously. It's not a once-off thing because you always have more employees in your company. And also, employees are getting promoted. Training is definitely needed, and also development is needed, especially due to all the changes that we get in the business environment. So if you think about technology and how much technology has changed, don't you agree that due to like different softwares and different information systems, that you have to learn how to use these things? And if not, then you are not progressing. So the same in the organization, when there's new machines, new equipment, new systems that are put in place, it's going to require training and development. And also in general, when you are training and developing employees constantly, you are also motivating them because now they feel that they know more, they feel more confident, and they also feel more ready and equipped to apply for higher positions. They see themselves evolving in the organization, and that growth and that development is what really motivates them to work a lot harder. Okay, and then it also makes it easier to delegate tasks to them because you know they're trained, they have the information, the knowledge, the expertise that you require of them. Okay, so it's very nice. And also you can look at it from the point that in South Africa, we don't have a lot of skills, a lot of skills that we need in our labor market. So a lot of the time we do have to, headhunt, or we have to look at like sometimes you have to go maybe to Joburg and you look at a LinkedIn profile and you realize, okay, this person's actually needed in my company, and you get this person to come work for you. So because we don't have that level of skills and training that we need in business industries, sometimes you are left with just the option to recruit, and then you train and you develop them on the job. Okay, so maybe you find someone who is very close to the skills and expertise that you need, but maybe they just need a little bit more training, or they need to know a little bit more about the organization and how to go about doing things. So that's where you can either send them for training courses, managers will train them, you send them for development courses. And this is just to expand on the capabilities and their skills. It's also seen as a competitive advantage because you are enhancing the quality of the people that work for you. So it's going to be very good throughout. Okay. Before we move on to the next bit, is everybody good so far? Are there any questions? Is anyone confused? Are we all good? Okay. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is marketing. Now, also within this learning unit, I'm only focusing on the things that part of our scope. So please do, when you are studying and you don't want to use the scope, go through everything, if that's going to make you feel better and if it's going to make you feel more prepared. But I'm just going to touch on the contents that is in the scope. And if you do need any slides or any other information that's not included here, then you are always able to email me and I will give you the full slides, because these are not like all the slides in the learning unit, it's only selective ones. So please do reach out to me if you prefer to have the full learning unit, okay? So this learning unit is all about marketing, okay? And it's actually a very exciting learning unit because in marketing, you get to be very creative, you get to understand people, you get to learn about different behaviors, different attitudes. So I find it very exciting. Okay, so yeah, in the marketing function, we are looking at communicating our product to the consumer, right? So within marketing, we're very concerned with the customer market because that is how we make our sale. And we are also focused on the customer market because if you look at what marketing is, it's communication, right? It's communicating a brand or information about a brand to the customers. So we do have to center it around our customers to see what will actually appeal to them, what they will respond to. Remember, especially today in this day and age, there's so much that you can do with marketing because there's so much out there in terms of platforms that you can market on and also resources. And now with AI, I don't know if you've noticed, but there are so many businesses that are generating their content recently, which it does take away the creativity element from it, which is sad. But there are so many resources now that assist marketers in like arriving at a really good communication strategy or promotional strategy to create brand awareness. Okay, so we're going to break it down and we are going to start looking at what exactly is advertising. Okay, now advertising is one of the communication tools in marketing, and advertising is used as a persuasive tool. So you are trying to persuade consumers into thinking about your product and also to make a marketing or a purchasing decision. So you can actually think of yourself as, like, you can put yourself in this as a consumer, but when you see an ad, and say it's a food ad, for example, you're seeing this like juicy burger, you're seeing the sauce dripping, you're seeing the different layering of all the ingredients. Suddenly you feel hungry, right? Even if you didn't eat, maybe you've had dinner, but now you're feeling specifically for a burger. So what the intention is here is to make the consumer feel as if they want the product or they need the product. Think about ads that you've seen recently. Most of the ads that I see are on social media or like from YouTube ads, for example. But back then, when there was no Netflix and it was just regular TV, you had ads that would just play one after the other, right? There'll be maybe like a minute or two, and it tells a story. It like creates this whole narrative for you where you actually feel some emotional connection to it. And then when you see the product in stores, you are familiar with the product, you're familiar with the story behind it, and that naturally attracts you to buying that product and making a purchasing decision. So the whole point and purpose of advertising is to influence, is to manipulate, is to persuade our customer base. And that's why ads are done so with like with vibrant color, and they make them short because like of some people's attention span, they get straight to the point. They really enhance the visuals. Like think about shampoo ads and think about how enhanced the image is of the shiny hair and, you know, like the fullness and all of that. It actually makes you feel like if you buy this product, that is exactly what you're going to see. And, you know, we all do fall for it. It happens to all of us. And advertising now is so massive that on actually like most platforms, you have different ads that you're seeing. Like even if you, I'm not sure if some of you guys have Pinterest, but I never used to see ads on Pinterest, and now I see ads on Pinterest. So it's definitely making its way on all platforms because what marketers are trying to achieve is they want to push for brand awareness. They want to reach consumers at on whichever platform that they can to promote their product. Okay, so this is what advertising is all about. Now let's look at public relations. Okay, what is public relations? And I also suggest that you guys learn the concepts and know how to define these, know the theory behind it, and also like to use an example. Okay, so public relations is also a form of marketing communication. It is a part of our marketing communication mix because it is communication in some form. And it's very strategic communication. So here you are putting together like this perfectly curated statement that you intend to communicate to the public. Now, the difference between advertising and public relations is the fact that with public relations, you are not focusing on solely the consumer, but the media, the public as a whole, your stakeholders. So also think about this as maintaining the organization's reputation. Okay. The business essentially wants to maintain their good corporate image. They want to be seen as, you know, like a business that's doing good, giving back, um, meeting their profit targets, all of the good stuff. So the second there is like a rumor or there's false information going about social media, you'll find that a representative from the business, or you could also say a public relations officer, will step in and will provide a statement to the public to address rumors that have been going on, to set the record straight, and to correct misleading information. Okay, so I don't know if you've ever heard about this, but maybe you've seen it in new movies or something where you have like public relations officer of a company, they'll be on a panel or they'll be like at a conference, they have media in front of them and they are speaking on behalf of the business. Now, this doesn't necessarily only have to be a negative thing that they are addressing. Sometimes they are even sharing good news. So if they are expanding, or if they have a new product, or if they some companies actually launch their product through public relations instead of just posting about it. So you don't only have to step in when there's a crisis and address the public. It can also be used to launch your product or something positive. Okay, now it's important to know the difference between the two. So if we look at marketing first and then we look at public relations, marketing is dealing with our customer market. It deals with creating a desire for a product and also attracting new buyers and potential customers to our brand. Okay, so it is very focused on a target audience, and the whole intention here is to promote a product. Okay, it's to promote this product as you know, reliable based on your product attributes, high quality. Okay, so those are like the focus points of marketing as a communication tool. Now, when it comes to public relations, here we are looking at the brand image. So whereas marketing, we're focusing on consumers, public relations, we are focusing on the brand image. So it's focusing on maintaining a good brand reputation. And it's important because say there are rumors going on about your business, you don't want people to be led on by that false information, because it can lead to boycotting. It could lead to a huge reduction in sales, and it's going to put the business at quite a risky position. So public relations is needed to really address matters, to step in when there's a crisis, and to maintain a positive brand image. So when you are studying, please learn the key differences between the two. You can also learn about the similarities of the two as well. So what makes them similar is that they are both communication tools, and they are both intended to create a message and to share that message to an audience. So those are some similarities, and these are the key differences between the two. So please know these well, okay? Okay, we're moving into market segmentation. Now, market segmentation is a huge part of marketing because it is the process of dividing a broad market into smaller, distinct groups of consumers who have shared characteristics, or they have similar behaviors or similar needs. And this allows us to target our marketing strategies on these groups of people. So instead of looking at a mass market and trying to satisfy everyone on a mass scale, which some businesses do prefer to do, market segmentation now groups people in similar characteristics and similar needs, so it's easier for us to target them. So we have three parts of this. We have the segmenting phase, we have the targeting phase, and we have the positioning phase. Okay, the segmenting phase looks at dividing a group of consumers based on the different the characteristics that they have. And how you can actually segment is either based on a location. You can segment based on your age, your gender, your income. You can also segment based on personality and lifestyle, and also behaviors of buyers. So looking at what are the attitudes of our buyers? What are the attitudes according to like some buyers are very particular, some buyers are very specific about what they need. Some buyers require certain things about a product. Okay, so you can segment according to very specific buying behaviors that or attitudes that consumers have towards your product. So segmenting is all about dividing the market into groups of people that have similar behaviors, similar characteristics. It can be in terms of lifestyle, it can be in terms of the place that they live, it can be in terms of behavior, it can be anything. An example of this would be like, if you take Mr. Price Sport, right? They cater to a specific group of people that like to wear fitness apparel, whether they are fitness fanatics or not. Some people just like to wear like track pants and like sportswear. So they cater to both people that actually use it for fitness reasons and people who just use it for aesthetic reasons. Okay, so that is their target group. You can also think about you can think about like products like Coca-Cola, for example. Now, Coca-Cola, although they are reaching the mass market, how they segment is based on their product, which we'll get to in the next phase of targeting. So what they'll do is they are supplying the mass market, but with their individual product offerings like reduced sugar, etc., they are trying to appeal to different groups of people. So people that maybe have diabetes, people who want, like Diet Coke, for example, is for people who feel like, okay, original Coke is too much and I want to be a little bit healthier, so I'm going to grab a Diet Coke. So they do segment, but more so in terms of their products now and their product range. Okay, so we move on to targeting. So once the market is segmented according to groups of people that have similar characteristics, we're now looking at targeting the market. So you get different types. And again, I recommend that you pay attention to these different types of targeting. Okay, so know the concepts, know how to explain it, and also know the examples or how to form an example of your own. Okay, so we have undifferentiated marketing. Now, this is where the business ignores differences in the market. So this is now appealing to the mass market. So you are not looking at specific behaviors, specific characteristics, and this works for things like sugar, salt, your basic things, like even if you like look at you get different brands of sugar, you get different brands of salt, but it's not targeted for something specific. It is catered to the mass market. So there's no intense segmentation here, and there's no intense targeting here because it is for the broader market. Okay, there's no difference there. Then we have differential marketing. Now here we have a multiple segment strategy. So here you are focusing on 2 or more segments. So here we can take the Coca-Cola example. So here the market is segmented based on your different product offerings. So you are now wanting to cater to different segments of the market. So Diet Coke, reduced sugar. I'm not sure how many others that they do have, but now they want to cater to people that have different preferences with their product offering. Okay, and then we can also have concentrated marketing. So here you are there's a single segment that you are concentrating on. So a company will choose one specific target market. And for example, if you look at Pep, so Pep will target the bottom end of the clothing market, which means although people are saying, okay, Pep is cheap, but that is genuinely what they are on the market for. And that's what they want to be known as, because they want to be known as an affordable brand. So you can segment a specific group of people, one specific group of people based on age, gender, based on like you have a price sensitive customers, you have a quality sensitive customers. So that is concentrated targeting. Okay, so please know these different terms, know them well, know how to explain them. And then lastly, in marketing, you're going to look at positioning. Now, after we've segmented and after we have targeted the groups that we want to target, we can now begin to position. And positioning is simply looking at the way that a consumer perceives a product of ours. Now, we want to basically position ourselves in the minds of our consumers and to position ourselves in a positive light. Okay, so you can position in different ways. You can look at attribute positioning. So this is positioning yourself with maybe one or more attributes of a product. So think about a catchy slogan, like for example, the example here is Savannah, it's dry, but you can drink it. Okay, so that sticks in your mind. It's one of the attributes of the product. Whenever you think about it's dry, but you can drink it, you naturally will think about the product. You can have product benefit. So you can position in terms of what the product can do for you and what is the benefit of this product. A lot of advertising focuses on the product benefit because it really emphasizes what this product can actually do and also sometimes compared to your competitors. So they will point out the very unique elements of this product. Like maybe if you are, for example, here is Gillette, promotes a closer shave, or you can say for sensitive skin, you know, they can also target it for like specific groups of people. And then the user application type of positioning. So here it's positioned in terms of like the use of the product. So Nike shoes can be used for running. It can also be used for aesthetics. I think a lot of us use our Nike shoes for aesthetic purposes. Okay, so yeah, you can position it in terms of that. For example, a lot of things that become a trend now are not always used for its intended, like why, like the reason the product was developed and its intention, like not everyone buys it for that reason. Now we mostly buy things and do things for aesthetic purposes, if you genuinely think about it. And this is due to the social media influence, right? So we can start to also market taking that into consideration. Okay, and we also look at user positioning. So positioning with the user in mind. So we're looking at the person who's likely to buy this product, and we are focusing our marketing on that. Okay, so if you are someone that likes to buy organic foods, vegetables, fruits, all of that, then you will have a brand that is dedicated to providing that. So for example, Woolworths. You also have competitive positioning, so you position yourself against your competitors' products. And this is why we see sometimes brands, they are very close in the way that they advertise. Okay, like if you see a car being advertised in a certain way, you'll see its direct competitor also doing something similar. It's to show the comparison between the two. It's to show why the one brand is better than the other. Although you're not allowed to directly mention your competitor, but it is very closely linked because they want you to see how they are actually better from their competitor. And then product category positioning. This is looking at products positioned in a product category. So yeah, if for example, if you look at a museum, it can be, you can go on a school trip to the museum. I don't know if you guys have ever gone on like a field trip to a museum, or it can also be very appealing to tourists. So you don't have to only limit it to one particular thing. Okay, and then quality of price positioning. So it's based on the quality or the prices. So again, if we bring PEP into the mix, it markets itself as low cost and affordable clothing because that is the target group that it is focused on. Okay, so that brings us to the end of marketing. Is there any questions on marketing? Are there any questions on marketing? No questions? Okay. Moving on to the next and final learning unit that we're going to look at, which is the financial management learning unit. Now, I recommend that you guys learn about your financial management concepts, know how to explain them, and also the different ratios within, which we will have a look at now. So firstly, financial management, very important. It deals with managing our financial resources in the business. Okay, so if you think about budgeting, if you think about the income and expenses, we need to manage all of the money coming into our business and all the money going out of our business, right? And that's how we remain sustainable, is when we focus and pay attention to how we're spending and also what we're making. Who do we have to pay? Who owes us money? All of that is something to take into account. And when you are running a business, you have a lot of expenses that you're overlooking. And at the same time, you are trying to make money. So it's important to monitor both of those things to also ensure that your profits are remaining higher than your expenses, you're paying off your debts, you are getting paid from whoever owes you money. All of that is taken care of, and that's why we need a financial management team. Okay. Now, we're going to briefly go through financial statements, the different types of financial statements that we get. Please know these well, know how to explain each of the statements. Okay, you get different types of financial statements, and it's basically gives us information on what is happening in our organization in terms of our finances. So looking at financial information, that can help us make better decisions, that can help us in planning. Okay, we need to know what's currently happening. We need to be able to forecast as well. It very much puts a lot of things into perspective when we have the financial understanding of it. And that's why we have different financial statements that we look at. So I'm going to go through the financial statements quickly. Okay, so we have the financial position statement. Okay, the statement of financial position. This gives us an indication of where we stand currently. So what is the financial state of the business? It's a basic overview of what is our financial situation looking like. Okay. Statement of profit and loss gives us an indication of the financial performance of the organization over a period of time, and it is looking at the profit and loss that we're making. So are we making a profit or are we making a loss? It's taking into account those two elements. Okay, and then changes in equity. So this looks at the movement or changes that took place in equity. Okay, you can think about things as equity over a period of time. So as you can see, it gives us, instead of compiling everything into one large statement that's very confusing, we have different financial statements that we can keep track of the different aspects of finance that we need to control in an organization. Then we have our statement of cash flow. Now we get different types of like activities within a business. Okay, we have our operating activities. We also have investing and financial activities that we look at. So cash flow statements, these are going to help us look at how money is basically moving within an organization in terms of our operations, so our day-to-day operations, what is happening in terms of our cash flow. Then it's looking at money coming from investments, what is happening in terms of that, and then obtaining and repaying finances. So this is also very important, okay, as part of cash flow. And then we have the financial statement notes. So this is basically notes that come along with financial statements. It helps us to put everything into perspective and it gives us more information. It basically interprets what all our different statements mean, because sometimes when you're looking at a financial statement, it can be very confusing. You don't know what's what. And when you have notes to go along with it, it makes it easier to understand and interpret. So a lot of the time you do have financial statement notes just to put things into perspective. So now that we understand the different financial statements that we get, we can look at elements that we can find in financial statements. So you will often find these concepts that will come up in a financial statement. You are not required to do a financial statement, but you are simply required to understand the concepts of it. So when you're studying, make sure that you can put these into a definition and you can also provide an example. We have assets being the first thing. Now, an asset is something that it's something that you own in the business. So your land, your buildings, vehicles, inventory. Okay, that's in simple terms. Liabilities, okay, these are our obligations. They can be short-term, long-term obligations. These are things like the loans that we have to pay, or our bank overdraft, or trade payables. Okay, so yeah, whenever you think of liabilities, you can always think about loans. Okay, make it easier as an example. And then equity, we are looking at the interest in our assets after deducting all our liabilities. So if you've ever done accounting in school, this will probably be quite easy for you to understand. I'm not sure if you guys have done accounting, but these are a lot of the terms that you will find in your financial statements, and especially these few that we are going through. Okay, income and expenses, this one is easy. We're looking at the money coming into the business. Okay, and then expenses is looking at the money going out. And remember, your expenses you have a lot of them, okay? Sometimes you're paying off your like you're paying your lights, your water, your rent, your salaries. Those are a lot of expenses. Plus, you are still paying for resources, and just like everything that you need in order to maintain your business. Okay, so these are some common financial statement elements, things that you will find. And now we're going to move on to the calculations aspect. Okay, so before we get into that, is everyone good with the theory behind the financial statements? I'm hoping that you guys are good. Okay, I'm not sure if you have your hand. Okay, you're all good. Okay. Okay, so now moving on to the calculations aspect. You are required to know the theory behind your calculations as well. So even though you will be asked to maybe do an asset test ratio or solvency ratio, you still need to understand the theory behind it. So we're going to start off with break-even analysis, okay? And what exactly is a break-even analysis? So this is basically where income is equal to expenses. Okay, there is no profit or loss that is made. So here it's quite simple. There isn't much to elaborate on this, but yeah, it's as simple as when we do our profit and loss statement, we will find that there is no profit that's made or there isn't a loss and we have broke even. Okay. Okay, and now looking at our cost volume profit analysis, sometimes is known as CVP. So whenever we are doing this, now you are not required to know the graphs, but you still can learn the graphs because it does help you understand this a lot better. Okay, like for example, you must understand concepts like fixed cost and variable costs. Our fixed costs are the costs that don't change. So they remain constant. So it'll be like your salaries, your rent, even though they may change every so often, like every year or so, for the most part, they do stay fixed for a long period of time. And then our variable costs, these are the costs that are likely to change. So these are things like buying resources, care physical resources that we have, like machines, equipment, those kinds of things. So we can actually calculate the profit and loss of an organization by doing the following equation. So taking into account the fixed costs, the variable costs, and also taking into account our sales. Okay, so simply what our cost volume profit analysis is to understand if we have made a profit or yeah, like where we stand in terms of our profit. So here you can say sales minus our variable cost minus fixed cost, and it will tell you either you have made a profit or a loss. So a simple way to understand this is to say our sales minus our total costs. So income minus expenses. Okay, that's a simple way to elaborate. Income minus expenses will tell you whether you've made a profit or loss. Okay. So now that break-even and cost volume profit is out of the way, we can get more into the common ratios that we do get. So we get two types. We get quite a few actually. So we're gonna do profit ratios first. We also get liquidity ratios. Okay, and then we also get something known as activity ratios. But we're gonna start off first with our profit ratios. Now, profit ratios are calculated to determine the profitability of an organization over the period under review. Okay, so we want to understand profit, hence why we do this. So you get two ratios in this category. You get a gross profit percentage and a net profit percentage. Okay. If we look at these calculations, so let's look at gross profit percentage first. Know the theory behind it. So this ratio calculates the organization's ability to generate profits by purely looking at sales and cost of sales. So you are not taking into account any other operational costs here. You are purely looking at sales and cost of sales. And here the formula is quite simple. You have your gross profit over your total sales times 100 to give you a percentage. They will give you the formulas. So don't spend too much time learning the formulas, but just in case you do still understand the formulas, but it's also very important for you to understand the theory behind it as well. So remember this ratio, it calculates our profits looking at sales and cost of sales, but it doesn't take into account operational costs. So you do not need to you don't need to consider our operational cost in gross profit percentage. Okay. Net profit percentage, on the other hand, so this ratio calculates the organization's ability to generate profit by looking at the organization as a whole. So if you think of the word net profit, it is looking at the business as a whole. So if we are looking at the business as a whole, we can't leave anything out. That's why operational costs are also considered as part of it. Okay. So the equation here is actually simple. You take your net profit, which they will give to you, and you take your total sales, which they'll give to you, divide those, and you times it by 100 to get you a percentage. Now, gross profit and net profit percentage, they're percentages. So you need to show them as a percentage if you get a question like this. Okay. Liquidity ratios is a little bit more complex. Okay. But I want you guys to please also don't only study the formula, study the theory behind the formula, because when you are asked a financial question in an exam, not only do they expect you to calculate, but they expect you to provide an explanation. So if you don't understand what you just calculated, you won't know how to interpret your findings. Okay, so the first one, so first let's look at what liquidity ratios are. Okay, so this refers to an organization's ability to meet its short-term obligations. So, or its long-term obligations. Okay, so these ratios will measure the organization's ability to settle creditors, bills, and other short-term obligations on time. So it's basically looking at, do we have enough cash resources to pay off our short-term obligations? And yeah, and if not, when a business doesn't have enough cash, they have to start liquidating. So they have to start dissolving or turning their assets into cash in order to pay off those bills that they have and their short-term obligations. So the first one we're looking at is called the current ratio. Okay, now the formula for your current ratio is very simple. You're taking your current assets divided by your current liabilities. And here, the focus is on short-term debt. Okay, so you are comparing what you have currently in terms of assets and what you have currently in terms of liabilities, and you're trying to determine, is there sufficient current assets to cover my current liabilities? Do I have enough to pay off my short-term debt? Okay, so it is always expressed as a ratio. Please, guys, this is where you may get confused, but after you have calculated, you must put it in a ratio form. And you have to say whatever your answer is that you calculated is to 1. Okay, so the ratio should be 2:1 or more to indicate acceptable levels of liquidity. So it should be more than 1, because that means you have more assets than your liabilities, and then you are fine. You'll be able to pay that off. So if you are calculating this in an exam, You will then do your equation. You'll write 2:1 or 1.6:1. And then you have to give a short little interpretation of what that means. A lot of the time they ask you to calculate for like 2 years. So they'll say like maybe 2001 and 2003, and you have to calculate two different ratios, and then you have to make an interpretation. Did it increase? Did it decrease? Okay, so know how to do that. Our next one is called a quick ratio, but sometimes it's also known as an acid test ratio. So for example, in an exam, they can either use quick ratio or acid test ratio. It means the same thing. Here, you're taking your current assets, but you're subtracting inventory from it, okay? And then you're dividing it by current liabilities. Here as well, this is a ratio. So you are comparing your current assets minus inventory with the current liabilities of an organization to simply determine whether there's enough liquid current assets to cover our current liabilities without inventory. Okay, so you don't want to turn your inventory into cash. You want to look at your current assets only. So you are removing it from there. So again, they will give you the formula, but you need to know how to put it into an interpretation. Okay, so again, it will also like fall in line with this. You do need to have more assets than your current liabilities. Show it as a ratio. And if you are asked to compare with like 2000 or 2021 and 2024, and you have two different calculations, look at whether things have improved or things have declined. And it will also help you with forming your interpretation. And then another very common one is known as our solvency ratio. Now, solvency ratio focuses on the long-term debt. So it measures the long-term financial stability of the business and also looks at can assets cover our liabilities, but we are looking at it from a larger standpoint. So we're looking at total assets and total liabilities instead of current assets and current liabilities, if that makes sense. And this one's also quite easy. You just take your total assets, you divide it by total liabilities, and you will arrive at a ratio. So again, it must be your assets must be more than your liabilities. Okay, so always remember that if assets are not bigger or more than your liabilities, then that simply means that you do not have enough assets to pay off your debt. Okay, and that's not a good sign for the business. So that's the theory aspect of our liquidity ratios. Now, looking at the activity ratios, okay, which is the last thing that we're going to do, and then we'll look at some exam questions, okay? So activity ratios, on the other hand, these are also called efficiency ratios, and they measure an organization's ability to convert current assets and current liabilities into cash or sales. So you have an equation called average inventory days. This formula is used to measure the average amount of days that we have inventory in stock. Okay, so the acceptable number of days depends on the type of product, but it should sell as quick as possible. If you have too many days that you have inventory in stock, that's not good. Okay, so here we're looking at average inventory over the cost of sales, and you're timesing it by 365 to get the amount of days. So whatever your answer is, you have to, those are the amount of days that you have. Okay, we have something known as the average collection period. So this is looking at your average receivables over your credit sales. The intention here is to measure how long it takes on average for debtors to pay their accounts. Also here, if it's too many days, that is not a good thing. That means they are not paying their accounts on time. So there is a problem for a business. Okay, the quicker, the shorter the amount of days, the better it is for the business. That means things are on track. So when you are calculating this and you are giving a short piece, you can mention that the longer it takes, this is what it means. And the shorter it is, this is what it means. And then when you have your number of days, you can just interpret that according to what the product is. Okay, so if, or not, sorry, not what the product is, but what that account is and what is the debtor, who is the debtor. Okay. Because it will be different for every business. And then we do have the last one, which is the average settlement period. Okay, here we are looking at how long on average it takes to settle outstanding accounts. So here we have to look at average trade payables over credit purchases, and we have to times that by 365. Again, we can't be taking too long to settle our accounts. Okay, that's not good for us. We have to try to get it done in the shortest amount of time possible. So the less days you have, the better. The more days that you have, that's not good. Okay, so that is how you can actually go about interpreting it. So please learn, like I said, learn the theory behind these ratios, know what they mean, because you will be asked to interpret it and it will be a mark. So please do so. Are we ready to look at the mock test? This is also a test that your lecturers would have shown to you possibly yesterday, if you did see your lecturers yesterday, or it will be shown to you sometime in the week by your lecturers. But I'm going to go through it now, so are we all okay to go through it quickly? It's not very long. We might run slightly over time, but if you have to leave, that is perfectly okay. This recording will be made available to you, so you won't miss out on anything. Would you guys like a 5-minute break, or are you good to go from this point? Okay. Wait, does that mean good to go? Okay, you are good to go. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing so I can share my screen with you guys. Can all of you see my screen? Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is just a mock exam. Okay, so this is likely like how everything will be set up. Don't be intimidated by it. It is 100 marks, so you do get 2 hours to do your exam. And yeah, this is just for practice purposes. So if you would like a copy of this, just email me and I'll give it to you. But you can also ask your lecturers for resources and for the mock exam, and I'm sure that they will be happy to pass it along to you as well. So we're going to start off with multiple choice, okay? So for the first question, we're looking at which of the following financial statements provide the user with an indication of the financial state of an organization at a specific date. Do you guys want to give it a try and see which option you think it is? You can write it in the chat box if you want. Anyone want to try which one they think it is? Yes, that is correct. Good job. So it is the statement of financial position, which is the first one. Okay. Which HR function involves the dimensions of performance in a job? So the role, the employee, the expectations of supervisors, the team, and the organization. So which HR function involves looking at performance, basically, or overlooking performance? I think this one's a little easy. Anyone want to try? see you guys typing, so I'm just gonna wait. You can just type out the number if you want. You don't. Yes, performance management. Good job. Okay. 1.3, which of the following is not one of the four basics, the four basic functions of management? This one is super easy as well. Yeah, it is 5. So innovating is not a function of management. And then during which step of the entrepreneurial process does the entrepreneur focus on expanding the business? Which one? This one is also a bit easy. Where do we focus on expanding our business or growing the business? Yes, 3. What is the primary purpose of a vision statement in a business? Primary purpose. Which is it? Nice, it is 1. Okay, so yeah, simple multiple choice. I don't feel like you guys will have trouble with that if you know all your concepts good. And I'm gonna try out some matching columns. Okay, solvency as the first one. Which one do you think best describes solvency from the columns? Have a quick glance. Which letter do you think? Any letter that you can think which best describes solvency? So let's see, it's not sourcing job applic. Let's see, is it C? It is refers to an organization's ability to meet its obligations. Good job. So C is out. It's for solvency. Recruitment. Which one do you feel is recruitment? Remember, recruitment is the hiring of our employees, potential employees. Yes, A. So recruitment is done. Marketing. What best describes marketing? Think of the word communication. Yes. D. Cash flow statements. The money coming in and out. Think of that. Think of the flow of cash. Nice. E. Okay. Human relation skills. There is one more option, and it's F. But which one between F and B? Which one do you feel? Ah, nice. Good job. So that was easy peasy. And now we get to a little bit of like more like in-depth questions. Okay. So question 3, you are expected to provide a brief explanation of the following terms within the context of business management, and you are also expected to give a detailed example. Now, there is no case study for this question specifically, so your detailed example is coming from you, so it must be an original example from you, okay? So how you'll be marked here is 2 marks for the explanation and 3 marks for your definition. That is how it usually is. So 2 marks for theory, 3 marks for your original example. So the first one is our interpersonal skills. Now here, you have to provide an explanation. So provide your definition of interpersonal skills. So you can say interpersonal skills refers to human relations where your ability to interact positively and work effectively with other people are very important. So you can talk about communication. You can talk about emotional intelligence with interpersonal skills. And then what kind of example do you think would suit interpersonal skills? Remember, you need a very detailed example. You don't have to give me a detailed example in the chat, but if you would like to share an example of what you think interpersonal skills is, if you had to put it into like the real world of business and not something too generic. An example of how a middle manager would communicate. Yes, yes. So when when you're using this example in a question like that, yeah, you can talk about middle managers and how they would communicate. Also, you can talk about the communication channel between all levels. So top, passing it down to middle, passing it down to lower, why it's important, why is clear communication important in that regard. So that would be perfectly fine. Then we have recruitment. Okay, so recruitment for theory, you can talk about the process where the organization communicates opportunities to the labor market, so through recruitment ads, etc., in order to attract qualified employees or people with specific skills and qualifications to the business. So when you are giving some sort of example from here, you can talk about how a business advertises a vacancy for a specific position. So the more specific you get with your examples, the better it is, because for 3 marks, your examples should be very specific and detailed. Even if you have to have like an explanation of it, like the business advertises a vacancy for a marketing manager online on job portals. Maybe you can get specific. You can say PNet, you can say LinkedIn, you can talk about social media in order to find qualified candidates. Okay. So the more specific you are, the better. Then see how it asks you for defining asset test ratio. Okay, so that can come up in an explanation question as such, where you are not calculating anything, but for 5 marks, you are giving theory to it. So what you can say here is the asset test ratio. You can also talk about how it's also known as a quick ratio, measures a company's ability to pay short-term liabilities without relying on selling their inventory. So that would be fine for an explanation. And then an example, you could say if a business has cash, debtors, bank balances that are enough to cover the short-term debts, then the business is considered liquid and financially stable. And then you can say if not, then they're not financially stable. So you can elaborate on that. You can even get specific about it. You can talk about the ratio itself. You can give an example of what a ratio would look like for a financially stable business and what the ratio would look like if it's not financially stable. Okay, so that will give you a good detailed answer. And then planning, something as simple as planning, but there's lots to say. So planning, theory-wise, looking at setting objectives, developing appropriate courses of action to achieve those objectives. Yeah, you can elaborate, you can talk about it, how it's intertwined with management. You can talk about how different levels of management plan differently. So how you can have strategic plans at top management. You can have more shorter plans at the lower level and the middle. Okay, you can talk about planning as a skill as well and why it's so necessary in a business. And then as an example, maybe you can say a retail company plans to open 2 new branches next year, develops budgets, staffing plans, and marketing campaigns to achieve this goal. That all entails planning. So planning can be a part of budgeting. It can be a part of developing a business plan, developing an organizational structure. So you can get very specific with that. What's also nice to do is you can actually use an existing business. So you can say, for example, if McDonald's were to open another franchise in this area, then it would require them to draw up an operational plan and draw up a staffing plan and also draw up like a marketing plan for themselves. So yeah, I think the more detailed your answer, the better chance of you actually getting the full marks for that. Okay, I hope you're all good with that. And then moving on to question 4. Now, as you can see, this is where like the comparison question comes in. So comparing the concepts of conceptual skills and technical skills. Now, because you are asked for 2 things, it can get confusing, especially when you're under like test conditions and you're kind of stressed. So break your answer down. Okay, so you're going to use the following to guide your answer. Briefly explain each concept. So start off with explaining what is conceptual skills and what is technical skills. Okay. So conceptual skills, for example, refers to the ability to understand more complex ideas, thinking strategically, and also viewing the organization as a whole. You can also talk about it in terms of understanding like vast amounts of information and interpreting that and evaluating that. And then you can immediately move on to an example after you've given an explanation, or you can talk about technical skills so that you know for the first point, you have a brief explanation for both. Okay, so if we look at an explanation for technical skills, remember I said this is specialized knowledge and the ability to perform a specialized task within a particular field. So it's very important that you stick to that type of definition. Using words like specialized knowledge is great when you are talking about technical skills. Okay, so the next point says provide detailed examples of each. Do you see how your example here is now going to carry more marks? So it has to be a very in-depth original example. So if we go back to conceptual skills, you can talk about a CEO analyzing future market trends and developing a 5-year strategy for business growth. Okay, so that will show you how conceptual skills can be used, especially at a top level management. If you're looking at technical skills, you can talk about how an accountant is preparing a financial statement using accounting software, and that shows a very specialized skill being utilized. Okay, but you can go more in depth with it. So you can mention specific things like for a specific company, maybe, or for a specific project. Okay, and then provide an analysis of the key differences and similarities. So here you can estimate if it's 4 marks, it's 2 marks for the differences, 2 marks for similarities. You should have a few points for each. So break the question down as well and firstly talk about the differences to make sure that you hit all the differences. So with conceptual skills and technical skills, if you have to look at the differences, conceptual skills focuses more on strategic thinking and decision making. They're mostly at top management, and technical skills, on the other hand, these are performing specialized tasks, and these are mostly for low and middle management. So you can talk about the differences as such. And then for similarities, you can talk about how they're both skills important for achieving organizational success and how they can be improved through training and also experiences. So making sure that you have both and you have talked about each skill, and it does happen. I mean, and I know sometimes you think, no, you answer everything, but in a stressful situation, you forget. So when you are asked to compare terms, please try to explain them for both, explain them fully for both. You can make your answer more organized. You can say conceptual skills, you can give your theory, you can give your application, and then you can go straight into how, actually, no. You can go straight into technical skills, theory, application, and right at the end, you can talk about similarities and differences to wrap up your answer. So that will actually be a nice setup. Okay, so then we know everything is together. It's not untidy. We know what exactly is conceptual skills, what exactly is technical. Now moving on to the longer questions. Okay. Our longer questions, that usually comes with a case study. So I've highlighted important bits in this case study. Basically, the case study is about the South African business, who basically their vision is to provide healthy, high quality vegetables, herbs, and seedlings to households, restaurants, schools, and supermarkets. And they also want to do this while promoting environmental conservation and food security. So that is in a nutshell what this case study is all about. They talk a little bit about like what the business focuses on in terms of its customers, profit, sustainability, and also in terms of entrepreneurship as well. Okay. So now we look at the questions. Firstly, we are asked to explain what a mission statement is and also outline 4 questions that Greenery should bear in mind when developing a mission statement. Remember, when you are answering long questions like this, it is very important that you break it down. So first of all, answer what a mission statement is first, okay? So when you are asked to explain, it means you need to give the theory or the definition clearly, and you need to show understanding of it. So for example, you could say a mission statement explains the purpose of a business, what it does, who it serves, and how it operates, and it helps employees and stakeholders understand the direction and goals of the organization. That is a nice little explanation of what a mission statement is. And now you have to outline 4 questions. So remember those 4 questions that we looked at. We looked at what is our business, who are the consumers, how will the product or service be supplied, and also why are we in business. But because they've given you a case study, you must apply to the case study. So use the case study to get your examples. So for example, let's do the first question, right? So what is our business? If we go back to the case study, okay, so as you can see, it says Greenery is a South African business established by 2 entrepreneurs, etc. This whole highlighted section is what the business is, okay? Now, in an exam, please don't directly copy this, like an entire chunk from the case study and use quotation marks. It is always best to put things into your own words. You can quote a bit of this and then interpret it on your own. So quoting is fine, as long as it's not solely a quote and you are also using your own interpretation. So don't only give quotes, interpret it, give your own understanding, because that is what gives depth to your answer. So you can say, in this case, Greenery is a South African business established by 2 entrepreneurs who identified an increasing demand for fresh organic produce, right? But you can also give your own roundup explanation of this as well, instead of limiting yourself to only what the case study says. If we look at who are the customers, again, you will be able to find this in the case study. So households, restaurants, here they say households, restaurants. Okay, that's who they are focusing their product on. If we look at the how, okay, so how will the products be supplied? They have innovative farming practices that they're using. So you can quote these things, but it's good to also interpret in your own words. So paraphrase if you can. Okay, you can quote, use quotation marks, but then on the other hand, also just interpret it with your own words. So a bit of both is going to make your answer more elaborate, more in depth. Okay, and then why are we in business? So here we're looking at like the broader purpose and the reason for the business. Okay. Somewhere here I read that it promotes environmental conservation and food security. Okay, right here. Promoting environmental conservation and food security is why they exist. So one of their goals is to promote environmental conservation. Okay, so that will be really nice put together of this question. Okay. These are the questions that they need to keep in mind when they want to develop a mission statement. So you're giving them all the little tools and everything that's relevant when you're making up your mission statement. Number 2, you are going to discuss the characteristics of entrepreneurs. So we just looked at some characteristics now. And when you are asked to discuss, you are asked to give theory, to explain the concept fully, and to explain with examples. Okay, so also a discussion, it can also be an analysis or expanding the idea and linking it back to the case study. So don't just give a vague example when you're asked to discuss, give a very elaborate example. So characteristics of entrepreneurs and align it to the entrepreneurs in the case study. So in your discussion, include the following. Fully discuss any 5 characteristics found in the case study. So we've just been through some of them. If we look at, there are a few here. Okay, in this paragraph, you will see it says Lerato and Sipo showed strong commitment and passion. So that's one characteristic. We also have dedicating their time and resources. Okay, and then you can say determined is here as well. Determined despite challenges, shows determination. That's another one. Okay, then you also see the word effective leadership. So here they are providing direction. And then there's also creativity and innovation that's mentioned. And the willingness to take risks because they are investing in new technologies, which is risky for their business. So as you can see, already you have found 5 characteristics. Now, if you were to mention that in this question, you will have to mention those and then you'll have to elaborate. So for example, you're talking about leadership. Okay, then you need to say this proves that the entrepreneur is leading the business successfully, is devoted to leading, or with creativity and innovation, it shows that the founders use innovative farming methods. So they are staying relevant in this time because using innovative farming methods will maybe bring about more success than using old ones, more redundant ones that have failed in the past. So you can actually just, you don't have to limit yourself in terms of the case study. You can always go beyond that and you can say more to what's just given in the case study in terms of those 5 characteristics. And it's 10 marks, so you can assume it's 2 marks each. So for each characteristic, you get 1 mark, and then for an explanation and an example, you get another. Okay. The next one looks at outlining 3 principles of the pure marketing concept. So we're looking at customer orientation, profit orientation, and organizational integration. These are the 3 aspects that are aligned with the pure marketing concept. So if we have to look at it, if you are asked to outline, this simply means you're mentioning the key points. Usually it means to use brief explanations, but also to include application from the case study. So try to mention 3 to 4 points for each for the application. So 3 to 4 points for customer orientation, profits, and organizational integration. So if we go to the case study, firstly, you give your theory, right? So customer orientation means that all business activities focus on satisfying customer needs. So we have to go back and look at where in the case study can we find something that shows that we care about our customers. And you can find it is somewhere here. Okay, within this section. So if you look at the business places strong emphasis on customer orientation by seeking regular feedback, which shows that they're customer centric. They're focused on their customers. Okay, if we have to look for something for profit orientation, so the founders recognize the importance of profit orientation as profits are necessary for covering operating costs. That shows that they understand the importance of profitability, so they're paying attention to their profits, and they're also looking at it in conjunction to their operating costs. And then organizational integration. So this means that all the departments and employees work together to achieve organizational goals and also customer satisfaction. So if we look at the case study and we see where we find this, we can see that employees involved in farming, packaging, marketing, customer service, and delivery work together. Okay, so all the employees are working together. So that shows integration. So do you see how from the case study, you can get all of your answers from the case study, but it's just a matter of interpreting it on your own and giving the theory. So you must know how to do that. Okay, are we good so far? Are we good? Okay. Okay, we're almost done, I promise. Okay, 2 more questions and then we're done. Okay, so 5.4, all businesses have 4 elements in common. Discuss any 3 elements. So we've done this already in the multiple choice. So you should be familiar with the 3 elements. What are they? Or give me any 3 elements of business, if you can remember from the first question. Can you remember 3 elements of business? What is needed? Or at least give me 1 element. Nice. It is human activity, profit surplus, goods and services, exchange. Perfect. That is amazing. Good job. So yes, you discuss any 3. And remember what I told you about discuss? You have to elaborate. So explain. They want the explanation and they want application. When it comes to discuss, they want you to really discuss all the facts, the points, give an analysis of it, talk about it in relation to the case study, really add depth to this answer. So any 3 elements and provide an example of each. So if we look at human activities as one, the theory behind it, we can say human activities refer to the people and the labor involved in producing goods and services. Okay, that can be our explanation. We can look at it, we can look at the case study for it. Okay, here it says Greenery currently employs several workers who contribute to production, packaging. Okay, so that would be an answer for human activities, okay, because they're employing several workers. So we know that they have human activities. Goods and services. So here businesses use resources to produce goods and services for their consumers. So we are looking for something that tells us what they produce. Okay, it can be anything. Okay, so we know they are producing fresh produce. Okay, we know that. So fresh organic produce and environmentally sustainable farming solutions, but there is a more specific answer that we should be able to find. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so yeah, this one should be fine. So produce organic vegetables and related products because that is what they are aiming to produce. And then profit and or surplus. So here businesses need profit or surplus to survive and expand. So we know we need to be making a profit. And we know from the previous, when we looked into it previously, that they are concerned with profit orientation. So they are looking at covering operating costs and expanding production to ensure long-term sustainability. So again, that is in the case study. So that is our 3 different elements. Okay, for 10 marks. I hope that was all good. That's easy to find in the case study. You're looking for proof of human activity, proof of profit, and also you're looking for the goods and services that they produce. And for the last one, here we're going to look at a calculation. Okay, so here, see how they give you everything. So 2023, 2024, they give you total assets, total liabilities, and they are asking you to calculate the solvency ratio for 2023 and 2024 and comment on your findings. Okay, remember to always round off as well to two decimals. Okay, so let's look at this equation. Okay, they've given you the total assets is to total liabilities, but you will know that you should divide total assets and total liabilities. Okay, so if we have to take these amounts, 51520 and you say divide it by your total liabilities. Remember, write out your equation, even though they give it to you, write out total assets is to total liabilities because you get a mark for that. Okay, so write that out first. So that is now inputting our numbers. And then what you get when you divide the two of this is 1.14. Okay, so 1.14, remember, you must have a ratio. So it'll be 1.14 is to 1. So this is going to be the first one for 2023. Okay. Now, 2024, always do both your calculations. You can do it side by side, so it's easier to look at however you want. Remember to write out your equation first and then input your numbers. Because you get a mark for that, and you also get a mark for putting in your numbers. So even if you're in a rush and you're thinking, okay, I'm just gonna do all my calculations on my calculator, don't just do that. Write it all out, because trust me, you will get marked for your entire calculation that you wrote out. Okay, so you divide total assets over liabilities. Okay, just making sure that's correct. And you should end up with 1.16, okay, is to 1. So now from looking at these two, so we have 1.14 is to 1 and 1.16 is to 1. What you'll have to do here is you have to give theory to it. So remember, if the ratio is more than 1 is to 1, then assets are greater than liabilities. So in this case, even though it's a little bit and slightly above 1, it still means that it's greater. Okay, so the business is generally financially stable. That is what we know. Now, if you had to apply this to the case study, remember, it's still a case study question. So if you have to apply this to a case study, remember, it's for greenery still. Okay, what do you think we could say in our application to the case study? Has solvency improved or has it not? Has it improved from what it was? It has. Okay, that's good. So when you are applying to the case study, you need to say greenery's ratio improved from 1.14 is to 1 to 1.16 is to 1. Okay, and this means solvency has improved. Even if it has improved slightly, it's still made an improvement. If this were to be less than 14, then you will say it has declined or it has not improved since. Okay, so you can decipher how to do that, but please, the method to answering a calculation question is always you write your formula first. So total assets divided by total liabilities, or you can say total assets is to total liabilities. Then you take your numbers that they've given you, substitute it into the formula. Then you calculate, you give your answer, and below that, give the ratio. Then do the same for the next year. Do it this way, and easily you will get a mark for each step that you have. So even if your answer is wrong, the fact that you have the formula, the fact that you've inputted the numbers, those are already 2 marks. And if it's 2 marks per formula that you have, it's already 4 marks. So even if your explanation is wrong, you're still getting part marks for this question. Okay, so is there any questions thus far? I know that I have gone over time. Some basic tips that I can give to you guys is always start with theory before you give application to all of your questions on the exam. Start off with explaining what those things, what the concepts mean, and then go into like the application. If you are taking something from a case study, go into it by saying, this is seen in the case study where so-and-so does this or so-and-so is doing that. It helps you to paraphrase your findings from the case study instead of constantly adding quotes. You can, it's perfectly fine to do that. But like I said, in conjunction to quoting directly from the case study, interpret it on your own because it adds depth. Okay, and if you have to quote from the case study, please make sure it's the exact words. Don't change the words. And then you link both together. Explain how that quote links to the theory. So don't separate your theory from the application, mush them together. Okay, so if you're talking about human activities, for example, you've given your theory and you go into, as seen in the case study, you give a quote from the case study, then give an explanation as to how this is showing human and human activities, okay, or how this is showing profitability, or how this is showing the marketing concept. So mash them up together and it will be a perfect answer. Are there any questions before we close the session? Thank you so much for staying this far into it. I know it's a lot to take in. And if you need any extra assistance, or if you would like any of my notes or other resources, please do email me. Okay, are you guys good? No questions? Okay, then don't forget this is recorded. So if you would like the YouTube link to where this will be posted, I can give that to you once it's uploaded. So you just have to email me, possibly tomorrow or the day after. And other than that, have a great, oh, okay, sure. Let me leave my email here for you guys. Okay, yeah, you can email me. This should be up on our YouTube channel, possibly by Friday. So you can always rewatch it. Thank you guys, and I hope you have a lovely evening and good luck in your studying. Thanks, guys.